This is the YOB ConvoCast, one-on-one conversations with your other brother's authors, community members, supporters, and friends.
What's up, friends, and welcome back to the YOB ConvoCast, conversations with people within the YOB community, contributors or otherwise. And I'm excited to bring not just a contributor, but the newest contributor. I'm so excited. My name's Tom. I'm the editor of the community. One of my favorite things, I wear many hats in Your Other Brothers, but I would say one of my favorite, if not my favorite, is editing people's blogs on the site and just being able to hopefully recruit some people as well if I think they have awesome storytelling capabilities and just awesome stories to share. And this person has contributed a couple posts through the years. He's been on a few podcasts already. But just recently I invited him to become a regular contributor to the site, which means we all win because now we just get more stories out of him, both on the blog and on the podcast. And I'm so glad we're going to talk about how both of those spheres of YOB intersect here today. It's our other brother, Alex. What's up, Alex?
Hello, Tom. It's good to be here.
Happy New Year. It's good to see you, brother. It's been a minute. Yeah, it's just really cool to have you. You've been a part of our community for a few years now. You've been on a couple of retreats. You've written some guest posts, and so I was just super excited when you said, "Yeah, I'll commit to that." I really appreciate your doing that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about it today, and believe it or not, fun fact, Tom, I reached out originally to you long ago in November of 2019 per my email account. That
Wow.
I reached out to you initially about Your Other Brothers and saying that I was interested in writing for you. And look, here we are.
No way. Did you really?
I did.
That's cool. Here's a little behind the snes because people have asked me that over the years. Like, what can I blog for YOB? And when we first started, it was a hard no. Like we were very select, or I'll just speak for myself. I was very selective just because I wanted to preserve the integrity of what we were. I didn't want to just have random people out there submitting things. I don't know who they are or what kind of life they're living or not really knowing anything about them. And so it was just pretty much closed off to our original co-founders initially. And then we did a couple waves of like, okay, these people have been in the community for a year or two and I trust them and I've met them or I've seen them on Zoom a bunch. And so there's more of a trust there that I think they have. They're going to represent YOB well with whatever they contribute. And so inviting them to participate. And then we've entered this like new phase where over the last couple of years, people who view our blog, they might notice that there's a lot of guest authors who have contributed. And those aren't just randos from them out of nowhere. Like those are all people that are in the community and maybe they're not going to contribute on a long-term basis, but maybe just for the one or two stories they have to tell, they submit those. And sometimes I recruit that out of them and sometimes they volunteer that. And because the trust factor is there and because they've been in the community for a while, I've put their posts on the site. And so now we're in this like new hybrid era where it's like, I'm still going to do that for sure. I'm still going to be looking for guest contributors within our YOBBERS community. But definitely looking to add more regular contributors as well, because, and I'm exhibit A on this is that I don't blog as often as I used to. I used to blog maybe a couple times a month or at least once a month. And now I'm lucky if I blog like every other month or every 3 months or something. But it's cool just to have other people rising up. There's new stories to be told because some of us who have been in YOB from the beginning or for several years now, maybe we don't have as many stories to tell anymore, or we feel some blogging fatigue. And so that's why I'm grateful for guys like Alex who are willing to answer the call and contribute some new stories because I'd love to have more regular contributors in the mix. So that's really cool. Just to tie a bow on that. That's really cool that you reached out about writing. And the answer was probably not necessarily a no back then, but it was like a hang tight. Like if you stick around long enough and I think you have good stories to tell, then I think that could absolutely happen in the future. So here we are now, all these years later. What a fun journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, November, like I said, November of 2019 when I initially reached out. And then I didn't officially join YOB until January of 2021, I think, was the day, because I also hopped on my first Zoom call that first day too. So that was, I was
You just jumped right in.
dive right in, you know.
Are you one of those people, if the water's cold, will you just jump right into the water, or do you inch your way in? Because that's the two strategies of getting into icy cold water. What's your strategy for that?
I would normally one toe or my foot initially first, and then I just go for it. Like at some point, you just got to jump in and you'll get over it. Especially here in California where the ocean is freezing all the time.
Yeah,
you're left with no choice but just jumping in at some point.
I aspire to be more like that. I am definitely of the more tentative approach, both in, all matters of life. Like I want to feel it out first. And it's not wise in the realm of stepping into icy cold water. You just need to go for it. You just need to submerge. So, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did with Yob when you finally took the plunge and joined us on Patreon. Shout out to the Patreoners, to the Yobbers. We love you. So Alex, this is cool. Something I'm going to do, I already told you, as a guinea pig, guinea hedgehog. I know you love hedgehogs. Something that I've done it's happened once or twice. It hasn't happened often, but sometimes someone's written a blog and then like fairly soon after that, I brought them on the ConvoCast to talk about the blog and kind of add another dimension to it and just kind of build this connection. Because a lot of people might listen to our podcast. I know this is a fact that some people listen to our podcast. They subscribe to us on Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or Apple Podcasts or whatever. And that's the only Yob content they consume. They don't even like click onto our website. They don't read our blog. They don't, access videos or access our community page or anything like that. So, and that's totally fine. If that's you, we love you, but we want more out of you. We want to like enhance your Yob experience because there's this whole other world, the blog, where all these stories happen as well, in addition to the podcast. And vice versa for that matter. I'm sure people listen to the blog and they read the blog and they don't really listen to podcasts because when are they going to have time to do that? So, so something I want to try more of this year here in 2024, the year of our precious Lord. I want to kind of create more of a bridge between these two worlds, the blog world and the podcast world. And just create episodes that kind of build off of blogs that were written, or vice versa, maybe for that matter. Maybe in the future, someone will come on a ConvoCast and that inspires a blog that they want to write. And so this episode of the ConvoCast will be linked on one of your blogs, Alex, that you wrote. So we're going to talk about that in a second, though, because before we get to your first official post as a regular contributor with your other brothers, we had a retreat a few months ago, and I guess this is the official closing of retreat talk, because I know we just brought on Matt last episode to discuss the retreat, and now here we are doing it again. But you wrote a guest post about the retreat, but something more of note that I wanted to talk about with you was that your mom wrote a post, which we don't get that too often. In fact, the first time that's ever happened, a mom of one of our brothers wrote a guest post for our site. So I would love to just quickly hear about that. Like, what was that like for you? Initially it wasn't a blog post, like it was just a reflection that she wrote, right? For you or for us to read, or I don't know. I'd love to learn the origin story of your mom writing a guest blog for your other brothers.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, my mother's amazing. She's great. I love her to death. She, over the past couple years, as I've learned a lot about myself and my sexuality and how that, is reconciled with my faith, she's been super, super patient with me and wanting to learn how to support me, how to love me well. She's done that through reading several books I've sent her. And yes, I've been sending her Side B books, and it's wonderful. I sent her Single Gay Christian by Greg Coles and War of Loves by David Bennett. And so there are plenty of conversations we've had about it. We've had, a lot of good time to process through things, to talk through things. She wasn't quite sure how she felt about it at first, of course, but over the years, she's just become, as always, my biggest champion. And I love my mom absolutely to death. I'll probably say that more times as we go through this conversation. But anyway, so the origin of her writing a reflection was the fact that because our retreat was in my home state of Georgia this past year, I was able to go see my folks and spend time with my family before retreat, as well as bring my mom to our pre-retreat lunch and letting her get to meet a bunch of us fellow yobbers. And getting to introduce her to the boys, which I was so excited about. She was very nervous about it at first, but once she met the guys, it kind of, in her words, it kind of melted away, and she started to really feel comfortable around us. And, she really loved seeing us interact with one another, as well as seeing me interact with the other guys. It was her first time seeing that in me, and seeing me be in that kind of environment, in that kind of sphere. And I think probably the most impactful thing for her, and the thing that really got her thinking, was when she dropped me off at camp. Yes, she dropped me off at camp at the retreat like I was a little boy. It was wonderful. I still chuckle about it. The thing that she really took away from it was one of our fellow yobbers said to her on her way out, "Thank you for showing us what a healthy mother-son relationship looks like." And she literally had like an hour drive back home, and she was thinking about it the whole time. And then proceeded to think about it the rest of the weekend while I was gone. And after, coming back to pick me up with my dad and meeting everybody else before taking me to the airport. And that was Sunday. And so I go back to work Monday morning, and I'm sitting at the desk at work, and I get an email from my mom saying that she had written her own reflections of a retreat from the heart of a mom. And I cried at my desk that morning as my students were about to walk in the door, and I was not expecting it. It was entirely unexpected, and I understand where I get my writing and storytelling from, as I get it from her. So, yeah. So that's kind of the origin of how and why she wrote it, because she was just overwhelmed with just admiration for our community and thankfulness for God providing that for me, as well as providing it for all of us here at Your Other Brothers.
Yeah. It was really cool to meet her, because we've never had that happen before. We've done 5 retreats now, and I've never met a YOBBERS mom and or dad. Your dad was there too, so that was another thing on the back end of the retreat. We got to meet your dad, and it was really cool just to have that dynamic of just a parent in the room, and just to see, kind of to echo what that other YOBBER told you, to see this dynamic of a mom, because not everybody there would be comfortable or would have like a sense of appreciation or comfortability with that dynamic of having a parent in the room, even if it's just to drop you off or to pick you up, even just like it was in passing, let alone spending an entire lunch with us before the retreat started. So that dynamic was really cool to just witness and be a part of, because I met a few YOBBERS parents now. Like I love the dynamic of seeing where all of us come from. So I've met quite a few YOBBERS parents at this point, and so it's really fun to add your name to the list of that. And I just remember when you shared that with our community, because she sent it to you and then you shared it with us. And then not too long after that, I asked you like, "Hey, could you ask your mom if that's something that she'd be comfortable having on our website?" Because I think it's really interesting. It was like great timing, honestly, because we have leadership discussions every month, and it's been something that's come up a time or two here and there about getting more female perspectives on our site. Obviously, we're hopeful of becoming Your Other Sisters. That's another conversation for another day, and that's a whole other collection of stories that we hope to have in store in the future. But stuff like, a mom's perspective of having a gay or a queer son, or something that I'm looking for more of potentially is like someone that's a wife in a mixed orientation marriage of someone in our community, and getting that perspective would be awesome to have as well. And, so it was really great timing when that came along, and she agreed to it. And ultimately I wanted you to agree to it too. And make sure you guys were both comfortable with that. And so now it's out there, and it was a blessing. It was a blessing to read. It was a blessing to put together and put on the site. And it'll be linked as always. Any blogs we reference will be linked in the notes for this episode. So if anyone missed it or you want to read it again, you can check it out. It was really, really cool. So pass along the gratitude to your mom for me and for all of us, Alex.
Of course. I'll probably be calling her sometime this afternoon. Anyway.
Tell her I say hey.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the main event, because that's just the setup, Alex. That's not even the main blog that we're here to talk about. So you actually submitted this post months and months and months ago, and I appreciate your patience as I have craziness in my life getting to other things. But it worked out really well, I think, for this to be your first official post as a regular contributor, because it was a great dynamic. This was like, I commented on the post. I don't know if you saw it, but I commented along the lines of, this is like such a YOBBE post that mixes together sexuality and masculinity and relationships, like all of those kind of things that are such a heartbeat of the stories in our community. So the blog you wrote, The Healing Power of Holding Hands with Another Man, this will be linked as well in the episode. And you started it off with a great little quote from Leo. I'm going to say his name. Leo F. Buscaglia. Is that how you say it? Do you know this person? Or did you just find this quote somewhere?
I found this quote online. So
okay, Buscaglia. We're going to go with Buscaglia.
Yes.
Buscaglia, one of those.
Yes.
But Leo wrote, too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. And so in this post, you talk about the value of physical touch. You reference the 4 T's and the church podcast, which we've referenced a few times over the years. And you have a link to that in there. And just like essentially the value of physical touch for all people, but particularly through the lens of, a queer person who desires touch as a conduit toward love, expressing love and receiving love, in healthy ways. And how do we like cross that divide in America? There might be someone listening to this in a part of the world where masculine touch is way more common or way more normalized, than it is maybe here in America or certain parts of America, certainly. And so it's just like a little bit of a glimpse into the window of this desire for touch and touch between, a queer person and a straight person. And how does that look like in a healthy, platonic, yet also intimate way? And so you wrote about these 2 guys, and I'm pretty sure, didn't I meet the first one that you talked about? I met him, did I not?
You've met both of them, actually.
I was like, I know for sure. I was like 89% sure I met the first guy you talked about, Dan. And then the other one, Jesse, I was trying to remember if I also met him, because I met a couple of your friends when I visited you last year.
Yes.
Out there in the City of Angels. Got to give a shout out to the City of Angels. And so I was trying to remember. Okay, so that helps me like get greater context just from a personal level of my own interaction with this post. But you wrote about this post. I'm curious. My first question right off the bat, because we're gonna talk about each of those stories real quick in just a second. But my first question is, did you bring this up with either of them that you would be writing about these experiences? Was it just like, I'm just going to write about it and tell them later after the fact? Or do they not know that it even exists? Like, what's the behind the scenes scoop on writing about these like really intimate little experiences with these 2 friends of yours?
So I did reach out to them. When I was first writing this, I was actually on a trip, writing this on a train of all places. That sounds totally like the perfect conduit for writing things.
That's my dream.
It's so great. You ought to try it. You won't go back. But anyway, so I was writing this blog on the train trip, and in and out of cell service, I asked both of them if, since I was writing a blog about this specific subject, if they were cool with me using their names, and both of them said yes. So they are both aware. And as soon as this was posted, I also texted both of them with the link. So they both know. And they have both probably read it now. I know Jesse probably's read it at this point. But so they're very much made aware. And I love them for being so willing to, have me tell these stories.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. I always wonder about that, about how people, on our blog, if they mention these things to their friends or family members that they write about, because some do and some don't, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. And I was curious about that right off the bat. Okay. So, I want to focus. You told the story of Dan first, about you were talking to him about physical touch. Like that was the topic of your conversation. You had sent him that link to the podcast about physical touch and just the meaningfulness of it. Something that I just really, that I gravitated toward, or something that I noticed, was that you expressed you expressed the value of what his hugs meant to you. Because my sense is, I'm not a straight man, so I don't know the answer to this question. My sense is that probably a lot of straight men are comfortable giving hugs. Like maybe that's not like at the tip of their mind as far as how I'm going to show love to my friends. Like, yeah, if we hug, and it may not be more than a half second long, but it was a hug nonetheless. And so my thought is, just from limited conversations I've had with straight men, is that that's not maybe something they think a lot about. Like maybe whether they're comfortable or uncomfortable with physical touch or not, like they will give someone a hug, but not really think anything about it. And what I thought was really profound and something that I resonated with from reading your blog was that just expressing to the straight person who may not think much of it, just to tell them straight up to their face, like, yeah, your hugs mean a lot to me. That showing of physical touch, whether it's a half a second long or 3 seconds long or 5 seconds long, however long the hug lasts, or whatever the shoulder tap or the fist bump or whatever the touch quotient is in your relationship, like it has meaning. It's not just a passing thing that you do as a customary greeting or a customary parting. Like there's actually value, deep value in that. And so I really appreciated your expressing that to him, because I get the sense that in my life, and hopefully a lot of people's lives that are listening, that's probably something we could stand to do more often with people, like just like telling them like, oh yeah, when you do that thing, it doesn't have to be even physical touch. It could be any form of showing love and care to somebody. But when you do that thing, I really appreciate it when you do that. And I think that's just super profound. It's so simple, but I think we can overlook that sometimes. So that was something that I noticed right off the bat when you told him that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I do agree. It's something that so many of us just overlook in terms of just how we communicate in terms of relationships. Like we get so caught up in the normal cadence of, life and craziness and work and just normal conversation, and just like, oh, how was work? Oh, work was great or whatever. This person's annoying me, or, I got a raise, or, all this stuff. And then it's like, we don't even know what it looks like to even communicate like our needs to each other, let alone like communicate how something someone else does, how that impacts us, and how that is, how that's something that is even enjoyable to us. Like, I love the conversation of like the love languages and being able to like talk about how each person receives love. And at first I thought, that's just how, the conversation of like, oh, that's how I receive love. But then it's like, no, there's also the other side of like, that's how I give love too. So for me specifically, I love receiving physical touch and I love giving it. It's, it's a twofold thing for me. And so, but like being able to have those conversations with people and being able to be like, okay, what is the best way that you receive love? Because obviously I have met many people who are like, I am not a physical touch person. And I'm like, I totally understand. I will give you your space. But just know I love giving it. And so that's like, we need to get to a compromise here of at least something. But at the same time, them communicating like that they are a words of affirmation person, that is like how they receive love, how they receive encouragement, or they're an acts of service person. Like they're really blessed by you serving them in whatever capacity that you can, whether it's like just unprompted, like helping them wash dishes after eating dinner with them, or like helping them clean up something, or helping them organize their garage. Like it could be something even small like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be touch, but it's cool to actually have those conversations and be like, okay, this is actually what it looks like to love someone well, is to actually ask them about it. Actually ask,
yeah.
and also tell them like, hey, you doing this for me makes me feel seen. It makes me feel valued and cared for. And I want you to know that because I love you and I care about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, so simple yet so profound when we communicate those, how the love languages all impact us and all affect us. So I was just really curious because I guess spoiler alert, but there's no way to not spoil the listening audience if they haven't already read the blog. Hopefully they'll be clicking over and reading the blog if they haven't already read it. But so you're having this conversation about physical touch with Dan, And then you write about how he reaches across the table and holds your hand. And listeners, may I say, my breath was taken away. I was like, what is happening? It was like, what is happening? So tell me what was going through your mind. I mean, you wrote about it, but tell me, like, so was that just like totally out of nowhere? Were you expecting something like that to happen, or like what were you feeling when he reached across the table to hold your hand in this conversation?
I mean, for starters, I will say I was quite nervous because we're in the middle of a restaurant here.
You are in the middle of a restaurant, yeah. It's Los Angeles. There's
Right.
Probably lots of people around. Yeah.
Right. Granted, it was a small pizza restaurant, so we were like one of maybe 4 or 5 people in there total. And he just like reaches across the table and, offers his hand, and I'm like, okay. And I, start holding his hand, and then there's like this, as like we're talking, and he's still holding my hand as we're talking, by the way. It's like there's like this nagging sense of nervousness in me as I'm like, oh my God, what if someone walks in, what are they going to think? Because I'm like, I know he's straight as an arrow. Okay. Like he doesn't play for that team whatsoever. But it's like, well, it's always the outward perception for me that like kind of freaks me out a little bit. But yeah, no, I was nervous. I will say I was a little nervous. But then I got over it because I realized just how intentional he was being and how like forward he was being with showing his affection for me.
Yeah. What was like the impetus for that? Like, was it a little bit of shock value of like, I'm going to be really bold right now and show him that I'm not afraid of physical touch, or that I hear what he's saying and I'm going to like reciprocate that? Like, what could you read from that situation, being on the receiving end of that?
I feel like it was more of like really showing and experiencing kind of what I was talking about with him, like the importance of it to me, and how and how it was like how I was really growing through that process, and learning to talk to people about it, learning to communicate that with my brothers in Christ, and being able to be like, hey, like this is how I receive love. And I realized that like for me specifically, it's really impactful. I don't know why. It hits me as hard as it does, but it just it blesses me in a way that I'm sure other physical touch people can understand. Like that it also like it just hits the core of you for some reason. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, I feel like that was him offering that to me as a way of like I see you and I understand you, and I want to bless you, and I want to be there, with you and be present with you, and really show you in the way that you receive love that you are loved.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I have all kinds of fears and insecurities about PDA or public displays of affection, and just like the perception. I feel like you and I have a similar vantage point from that, because that would have been in my mind too. I would have been like, oh my gosh, who is watching right now? So yeah, I mean, that was a powerful experience that you talked about there. And contrast that with, or compare it with rather, your story with Jesse, which followed right after that. I love how you described how he describes the friendship, saying that he's a lifer. That is like, there's nothing you can do that you can get rid of him. Essentially, is that like the connotation of it? Like you're basically stuck with him.
Yeah.
For better or worse. I like that. I like that description, a lifer. I'm sure there are people listening that have some lifers out there that, you're, like it or not, you're stuck with this person in a good way. It's kind of like in a joking sort of connotation there. But yeah, this one's interesting because in the first story, you talked about receiving this unexpected touch from your friend, Dan. Whereas in this one, you initiate the touch with your friend, Jesse. And so I love that in one blog post, we get to see both sides of this receiving of touch, and then also the expressing of touch. And so yeah, you're with him, you're with Jesse in a park, and you're walking through a park or alongside a river you write about. And And like, what's going through your mind? Because you talk about extending your hand, and I really want to get inside your mind for a little bit of like, what's like, yeah, you're spending this time with him. Like, why do you want to extend your hand to him, and what's going through your mind in that moment?
Whew. Yeah, that was quite the day. Yeah, it was really special because we hadn't seen each other in so long. It had been, oh man, I feel like months, maybe several months, or something of that nature, maybe a month or two. I don't know. I just know it was a long time since I had actually seen him in person. And so we planned just meeting up with each other and getting to hang out. I remember I brought Chick-fil-A that morning, as well as some little macaron desserts, which are lovely. I'll have to take you there next time you're in town, Tom. You'll love them. But anyway, so we're catching up and at this picnic table, eating breakfast and all this stuff before taking off on a walk around the area just to catch up and just to talk. And as we're walking, we're just constantly like going up this path that's like, so I say river, but what I mean by that in the middle of Los Angeles is the LA River. This little park is right next to this big bridge that goes across the LA River, and then alongside of it on both sides, there's walking trails on both sides. And so people ride their bikes, people even ride horses out there, by the way. And technically you can go all up and down the side there. And so we're walking up and down both sides, just kind of exploring because we've never been to this park or whatever before. So as he and I are both very adventurous in soul as well, he's gone with me on many hikes, and we've done many, some would say, risky things to see waterfalls and stuff. So yeah, he and I are two peas in a pod when it comes to that. But as we're walking, I just remember, like, again, this is like one of my best friends. I love this guy to death. We've been through a lot together. And as we're just catching up and talking and it being so long, I think the absolute truth of the saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder, of like, I really miss this guy. I really did. And I really miss spending time with him, hearing his voice and getting to hear about his life and being encouraged by him, hearing about what the Lord's doing in his life. Like the whole thing, all of it was just like, I was just living in the moment. And I was just so just overwhelmed with just affection and care for my friend and my brother. And I just remember the thought crossing my mind, like one of those really weird, intrusive thoughts being like, I want to hold his hand. And then the spiral of my mind started to go, wait, why do you want to hold his hand? Like, are you going to do it here in public? Like, there's people on the trail. What are they going to think? Are they going to think y'all are a couple? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm less like, so probably about 10 or 15 minutes worth of like stress-induced, like spiraling of thoughts happen as we're like walking next to each other. And then at some point I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to try. I'm going to reach out because I care for him very much. I love my brother. I love my friend. And I want to show him that I really do care about him. And he's also a physical touch kind of person too. So he gives the best hugs. I love his hugs. And so
Take that, Dan.
Excuse me. Both of them.
I'm trying to create some drama.
Don't you dare. You
just said he gives the best hugs, which therefore means Dan does not.
Oh, both of them give the best hugs. If either of you are listening to this right now, okay, don't go to war.
Shout out to Dan and Jesse.
Please don't. Or don't come for me either, please.
He gives really great hugs, and so you also there's a similar wavelength there as far as an appreciation for touch.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I'm just gonna do it. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, no, I'm gonna do it now. 3, 2, 1. Okay. One more time. 3, 2, 1, and then just offering it out.
You know what that reminds me of? You just, because I can totally get the process of that. It's like when the alarm goes off in the morning and you're trying to just be in bed as much as you possibly can, and in your mind you're like, okay, 3, 2, 1, I'm getting up now, and I'm not. I'm still lying in bed. Okay, 3, 2, 1, I'm gonna get up now. No, I'm gonna turn. I'm gonna stretch a little bit. I'm gonna really absorb this. So I resonate with that, like that hesitance. There's a determination, but also a hesitancy that are like. There's got to be a good word for that, where both of those things are simultaneously happening. But then, okay, so you stick it out, and that was how my visual for this story was that your hand is hanging out there, like in limbo. And like, is that the visual, that it's just hanging out there in limbo, and that he's got to then match you, or do you grab his hand? Like I needed some clarity on the scene there.
I did not grab his hand. Okay. I offered it, like we're walking next to each other. I just, kind of offer it out there, and in your mind, you would think that moment would last for like an eternity of like, oh God, is he actually going to grab it? Is this actually going to be a thing? And then in typical Jesse fashion, it looks at me, smiles, and then pretty quickly thereafter just grabs my hand as we continue walking up the path. So yeah, it was like, there's again that moment of like anxious hesitation, and then just going for it. Like we said earlier, just jumping in the ice cold water, just like going for it, and then like waiting to see what happens. And it, ended up being such a blessing to me. And I hope, I would like to think it was a blessing for him too, in terms of just showing our mutual love and affection and adoration for one another as friends.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. So because you said it so quickly. So when he held your hand after you extended it, like, was the matter discussed about what was happening, or was it just like, oh, okay, we're holding hands now and we're just gonna continue discussing whatever we were discussing and walking as we were walking? Like, what was his vantage point after he held your hand?
Honestly, I feel like we just went with it. I feel like there may have been, I mean, this was a while ago. And normally I have a really good memory, so I should remember this. I'm sorry, Jesse, but I feel like we just kind of went with it. We just kept walking. We just kind of continued the rhythm of our conversation as we went. I mean, there may have been a mention of it between us, but like, yeah, it just kind of was the thing. And I was just like, just there and grateful for him to, share that with me.
That's really cool. Yeah. I mean, I think something that I wanted to ask is like, so in that moment, obviously there's a lot of anxiety and hesitation. And so I was curious, like when you were debating whether to do it or not to do it, obviously you were thinking about the public reaction because you were in a public place. So that was part of it. But I was curious if you had any doubts about his reaction. Like, did you think, not that he would outright reject you, because it sounds like you have a good bond and a good friendship. And if you know that he's into physical touch a little bit, that maybe it's not like he's not going to like reject you as a friend or reject you as a person or whatever. But did you worry maybe that there would be a response of like, sort of like a thanks, but no thanks? Like, oh yeah, I see what you're trying to do. And I don't want to make you feel weird about it, but I don't really want to do that in public. Like, were you worried about that kind of a reaction? Or I was just curious, where was the hesitation coming from with that initiation of hand holding with him?
Yeah, I would definitely say that may have been something that crossed my mind. It was mostly like the public perception thing, of like, I don't want to put him in an awkward position of like appearing like, being holding hands with another guy in public. Like, for some people, that's like very, like, again, presentation is everything for some people. And so I wasn't sure, what his, what that response would be to that. And at the same time, there's always, the anxiety of myself being like, am I showing too much affection in public? Like, I obviously love people, but like, and I love hugging people, but like sitting like in a public place, like with my arm around someone, Like if we're sitting on a bench or something and I've got my arm around someone's shoulders, or like even holding someone's hand in public, like that, to me, that's still, there's still the nervousness of like how I will be perceived. And in terms of like, even if it's someone who like knows me and knows me well, like having to explain, like I feel like there's part of me that like is put on the defense of like having to explain myself and be like, I'm not doing something bad here. I'm showing my friend how much I love them, and I'm doing that through the act of holding their hand. Like that's how I want to do it. And I'm always hesitant because I'm scared that I have to explain myself to somebody.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. And I do think like by and large, I've had people tell me this many times over the years. I think by and large, everybody else, like they might turn and look at you for half a second, 2 seconds, but like everybody else is living their life and they have a million things going on in their mind. Like the last thing they're going to do is like all of a sudden forget about what they're doing in the park or what they're doing in the pizza restaurant or whatever. And just like all of a sudden they're like not going to think about anything else but whoever's in front of them for this like passing moment in time. And so I think that's like one thing that I think about with reading the touch in public places aspect of this, because then I think there's the other insecurity. I feel both sides of this. Like there's also the insecurity of initiating that kind of touch or receiving that kind of touch in private and like feeling like, oh no, like we're behind closed doors and nobody else is here. And now it feels like it's like this clandestine, like nefarious thing that's happening because we're having a moment of physical touch with no one else in the room. Like, where is this going? Or
right.
What does he think? Where does he think this is going? And so I could see it being like a no-win situation if you look at it from both sides of like, oh, if there's nobody around or if there's lots of people around. And so then there's like the mind games of how can I just express healthy physical touch with another man. And so, so I was kind of feeling both sides of that as far as like where is the ideal scenario or the ideal place for physical touch? Because whether you're alone or whether you're with other people, like I think there's always going to be a perception thing of how either other people are perceiving it or how the other person's perceiving it. And so I just think you exemplified great communication in all of these stories. And so it was just really cool to read both of them and to have met both of these friends is really cool for me too, just to know who they are and to put a name to a face and to be able to connect that. So, I don't know. Again, shout out. I joked about it earlier, but shout out to those guys. Thanks for their inclusion on our fun little website. What an honor for them.
Yeah. Like I said, they're two of my best friends. I love them to pieces. I'm just blessed and grateful that God brought them into my life to be an encouragement to me and to continually be brothers in the faith and in my life. I love them. I love y'all. Shout out to y'all. You hear me? I love you.
Very nice. And Alex, you give pretty great hugs too, not to sell yourself short. Got to throw yourself in the ring as well. So listeners, if you haven't read the blog or commented on it, we would love some comments. Go over to our website, yourbrothers.com, and the link will be in the episode notes. Comment on the stories and share some of your own hand-holding, physical touch, like moment of truth stories. Like I would love to, because I know there are many others out there. I know there are moments where you can resonate with what Alex was saying. Like you were counting down in your mind, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to ask for permission to do this, or do this thing that I've been wanting to do that is a healthy way to express physical touch and love with my male friends. So I would love to read more of those stories over there, as would Alex. So please.
Oh, yes. Of course.
And if you want to talk to Alex, if you want to reach out to him, he's got a shiny new Your Other Brothers email address now. So you can email him at alex@yourotherbrothers.com, and he would love to hear from you.
Oh, yes. Feel free.
He'll respond within 3 to 5 business days. Hopefully. That's always the hope. And I have to preach to myself there about 3 to 5 business days to respond. But yeah, I'm hopefully getting better at that. Alex, thank you for jumping on, not only writing the blog, but coming on the podcast to talk about it. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always. And I'm so excited to more actively tell stories with y'all. Like, I'm very excited about it.
I'm so excited. Yeah, thank you for being the guinea hedgehog to test out this little process. I think we'll do it more often this year with people writing blogs on our site and just getting a little audio companion. So I'll put this podcast link in Alex's post as well, so people can read the post and then listen to the podcast, or listen to this podcast and then read his post, and all of it cycles into one another. So it'll be awesome. Looking forward to your next little contribution, Alex, whenever you can get to it. And looking forward to just a great year ahead. We're off to a strong start on the website with new blogs and podcasts as we talk about all these matters relating to our faith and sexuality and masculinity, putting it all together. So until we cast our next convo, y'all, see you next time. Bye, Alex.
Bye-bye.
Maybe instead of guinea pig, you're the guinea hedgehog, right? It's another.
Yes.
Is a hedgehog a rodent or is it not a rodent?
I don't think they're rodents. I don't think they are. I think they're a different family. Now you have me Googling it real quick just to confirm, because I would not be doing my due diligence.
Is great.
No, they are not rodents. They are rodents are in the Rodentia family, and hedgehogs are in the, let's see, Erinaceidae family. Erinaceidae.
There you go. I bet you there's got to be one zoologist out there listening who knew that right off the bat.
Oh.
They were like, no, hedgehogs aren't rodents.
I'm sure.
They're in the blah, 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 blah family.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad we covered that up. We always love to be educational on the show as much as we can.
We try to be.
Give the people some Jeopardy knowledge if they need it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go.
Just something to file away in your memory palace,